Field trips are supposed to be the best part of school. A chance to escape class, hang out with friends, and make good memories. But for some of us, those trips didn't end in laughter or fun. These are 3 unsettling true field trip horror stories. The cabin in the woods. This happened in 8th grade, during a 3-day school field trip to a nature camp. The camp had a bunch of old wooden cabins where we were supposed to sleep in groups of 8, with a teacher staying in a separate cabin down the hill. At first, it was exciting. We unpacked our sleeping bags, claimed bunks, and joked about how the place smelled like mildew. My friends and I stayed up late playing cards with just a single flashlight lighting the room. But the first weird thing happened around midnight. As we were finally winding down, we heard footsteps outside our cabin. At first, we assumed it was one of the teachers doing rounds. But the steps didn't move away. They circled the cabin slowly, crunching leaves underfoot. One of my friends whispered, "Maybe it's the counselor checking in." But none of us wanted to look out the window. After a few minutes, the footsteps stopped, right by the cabin door. We all froze, staring at the faint outline of it. Then came the knock. Not loud, not soft. Just one slow knock. Nobody moved. Another knock. Then silence. We eventually convinced ourselves it had to be a counselor messing with us. But when we asked the next morning, none of the teachers admitted to it. In fact, one of them scolded us, saying it was dangerous to be wandering outside at night because the camp bordered private hunting land. The second night was worse. Again, just as we were trying to sleep, the footsteps came back. This time, they were heavier. Whoever it was walked up to the windows. We could see the shadow of someone's head briefly blocking out the moonlight through the blinds. One of my braver friends whispered, "Who's out there?" No answer, just breathing. Then the crunch of footsteps moving toward the door. The knob jiggled, once, twice, harder the third time. We whispered for the teacher, but our cabin didn't have phones, and none of us were going to run outside. Eventually, after what felt like forever, the noises stopped. The next morning, we found faint muddy boot prints by the cabin steps. The teachers brushed it off, saying it could have been one of us sneaking around, but nobody admitted to it. The last night, I woke up to the sound of the knob again. This time, I swore I heard whispering. A deep voice just outside the door, saying something I couldn't make out. We didn't sleep that night. When the buses finally came the next morning, I remember feeling a relief I'd never felt before. To this day, I still wonder if someone from outside the camp was watching our cabin, waiting for a chance when a door might open. The overnight museum trip. In high school, I was part of a history club that did an overnight trip to a famous museum in the city. It was one of those sleepover at the museum events, where students spread out sleeping bags in different exhibits. At first, it was fun, just hanging out under dinosaur skeletons and glass cases. Around 1 a.m., most of us had settled down. My sleeping bag was near the corner of the Egyptian exhibit, close to the mummies. The lights were dimmed, and the only sound was occasional whispers from other students. I must have dozed off, because I woke up to the sound of something dragging across the floor. At first, I thought it was one of my classmates moving their bag. But when I lifted my head, I saw everyone around me asleep. The dragging sound came again, but slower this time, like heavy fabric being pulled across tile. I turned toward the glass case with the mummy inside. The museum staff had left a rope barrier a few feet away, and I could swear the rope was slightly swaying, as if someone had brushed against it. I told myself I was imagining things, but then I heard it, a cough. A raspy, dry cough. It didn't sound like any of the kids. I sat up fully, my heart pounding. That's when I noticed something strange. The security guard who had been stationed at the exhibit earlier was gone. The chair where he'd been sitting was empty. I tried to wake my friend next to me, but he just groaned and turned over. I decided to lie back down, staring at the ceiling, refusing to look at the mummy case again. When morning came, I checked. The case was locked, of course. Nothing seemed disturbed. But the security guard never came back for the rest of the night. When I asked a museum staff member about him during breakfast, they looked confused. They said they hadn't scheduled a guard to sit in that section at all. The rest stop. This happened on a middle school field trip when we were traveling by bus to Washington, D.C. It was a long drive, so the buses stopped at a rest area around midnight. Everyone piled off to use the bathrooms and grab snacks. I went into the men's restroom with a group of friends. Most of them left quickly, but I was still washing my hands when I realized I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. From one of the stalls came the sound of breathing. Slow, steady breathing. At first, I figured someone was just using the stall, but something about it was off. The breathing was too deliberate, almost exaggerated. I called out, "Hey, is anyone in there?" No reply, just breathing. I started to feel uneasy, so I turned to leave. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The stall door was slightly open, just enough for me to see. There was a pair of boots on the ground. Large, mud-caked boots. They weren't facing forward toward the toilet. They were turned outward, toward me. Before I could process it, the boots shifted slightly, like the person inside had just adjusted their stance. The breathing grew louder. I quickly walked out of the bathroom and rejoined my classmates, trying to act normal. I didn't tell anyone at first, thinking maybe I was just overthinking. But when we got back on the bus, I glanced out the window at the restroom building. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a dirty jacket and those same boots. He stood in the parking lot, scanning the buses as if looking for someone. Then, as our bus pulled away, his head turned. And I swear, his eyes locked directly on mine through the window. That wasn't the last time I saw him.